Welcome, everybody, to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Monday, it's 12:30. You know the drill. Joining me, as always, on the Monday Club is the double AC, the amazing Amy Canavan. How are you, Amy? Afternoon?
Good, doing good, Tony. Thank you. Yeah, it's always nice to come on after a emphatic Celtic win, so makes the job a little bit easier on a Monday, doesn't it?
Of course, check that out. Smiling, eh?
Mhm.
Magic. Great. And Russell Boyce, after his 34th birthday celebrations, looking like a man who has been celebrating his 34th birthday every inch of it. How was it, Russell? Good?
Oh, it was quiet, Tony, quiet. A couple of games of Scrabble, mate.
I can hear that in the voice there, quiet. You're sounding very Bonnie Tyler-esque. But there you go. So we'll see how it goes. But yep, as Amy alluded to there, 4-2, Dens Park. Lots to be chuffed about, Amy. Reasons to be cheerful. Parts 1, 2, 3. What was your thoughts?
Going forward, it's just such a joy to watch, isn't it? And because it is such a joy, it does kind of make not the defensive mishaps easier to deal with, but you can kind of I don't want to say let them go, because then that's kind of shows complacency, but you can kind of forget about them a little bit easier because you just quickly turn the conversation back to the attacking prowess. And it's just, Celtic are just simply a joy to watch it now. And it's from all sectors of the park. I know I'm saying attacking, but it's coming right from Juranovic and Ralston as well, and Carter Vickers stepping forward. I think going forward, it's probably some of the best football I've seen Celtic play in my lifetime. And I know that's not like the longest period ever, but it's going forward, it's an absolute joy. There are cause for concern, still at the back, and we can all see that's clear as day, and it is a little bit of a worry. But like I say, the worrying can kind of be overshadowed a little bit because you just need to think of, when you've got Kyogo up there and Jota, it's just goals are going to be scored.
Russell, 8 games unbeaten. Livingston, the temporary blip in the grand design, we hope. Another, as Amy says, rampant attacking display yesterday, and the Scottish Cafu, Ralstinho, setting up 3 of them. He just goes from strength to strength. Stevie Clark, that was a wee reminder yesterday of what our man brings to the table, but maybe one for the future. But Amy touched upon it there. Elements in the defence that need to be improved, that's cool. But you trust these guys now to go on the park and to score goals, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. And I think, when you're looking at the sequence of results we've had, you were talking last week, you said they need to go on a winning run. Perhaps the unbeaten run might be as close as we get to that sort of winning run at this stage, because it's a transitional season, as we keep getting told. So I think, in fairness with that, 8 games unbeaten is actually quite a decent run that we're on right now. Mm-hmm. I think I agree with Amy, though. When we go forward, we look devastating. Jota's arrival's been absolutely key to that. Kyogo continues to go from strength to strength, but Tony Ralston may well just enjoy right now being the unsung hero. I think he likes that. Again, his contribution yesterday is unrivaled. 3 involvements, three of the 4 goals, outstanding for Tony Ralston. And we were talking as well last week about how sometimes you need a blend, and it's great having brilliant technicians all over the team. Sometimes you need folk who, for want of a better term, as I always say, get it. Yeah. And I think Ralston is delivering on that front, but is now, rather than just getting the almost patronising praise of he gives his all, his contributions are outstanding. I don't know, I think, is it 6 assists he's up to for the season?
Yeah. 6 goals. Let's have a look at it. Right, 6 goals, 6 assists, 43 appearances, another excellent performance. He's by some distance, considerable distance, Celtic's most improved player. And there was a real laugh out loud moment, chuckle moment with the Charlie Adam incident yesterday, wasn't it? When Charlie falls on his backside and your man whips in the cross and Celtic score after Charlie had kind of laid one on him, Amy. So I think Celtic got a bit of pleasure out of that one yesterday, didn't they? That kind of comedic moment. But more for Ralston himself, it's just the rise and rise of Ralston. It's just been a real joy to watch. And I put my hand up and I've said that I've been quite a vociferous critic of Ralston before this season. But I tell you what, and I even wrote it in the Celtic way, I hope he is getting personal delight ramming my words down my throat, because it's just, and that was the sentence that I wrote. So I admitted my part in maybe being a bit harsh on him, and like Charlie Adam, getting in a wee bit studs up on him, before the season had continued. But he certainly proved me wrong, and many others, Amy.
Absolutely. I don't get many things right. In fact, I get a lot of things wrong. But I stood by Ralston quite a bit and took a lot of flack. And I was on the show with Colin and Paul at the time. I was thinking it was way back on the Wednesdays at the start of the year, and it was with the signing with John Joe Kenny. And I said, give Ralston a go, because he cannot be any worse than what we had at that moment in time. And I have looked back at the Twitter threads because I find it quite funny. But I'm not petty enough to then bring it back up. On Twitter, I could retweet it, but I just can't really be bothered. But it's one that I know that I have actually confidently got right, and I know if anybody dug me up on it, that I have got this one right. But it's not a case of I'm right, you're wrong, because it's just fantastic for him. It's so, and as Russell says, he gets it, and I think that's why everybody is getting on with him so much easier as well, because he's just, he's kind of just like the Celtic fan living the dream now as well. And that comes across in every appearance. He is the first guy over. We were speaking a few weeks ago, when there's the tackle, he's the first guy over and in the face, not in the face of the referee, but he's in the face of, the opposition players and sticking up for his teammates. And that is fundamentally what you want to see. He's just kind of being the big brother, almost like I get the club and I'm going to teach you basically what you need to know about this. And I just think, fair play to him, because I was actually speaking to Andy, who's a great friend of ACSOM as well, and he said, the best thing that's actually happened to him is not being involved in last season's debacle, because it's a clean slate for him, but there's no carry on from last season, and to be honest, he's probably right. Perhaps if it didn't go right towards the end of last season for him, he might not even got this opportunity here, or certainly Celtic fans would be on the back of him and go, look, well, you performed like X, Y, and Z in April or whatever. So I think for him as well, it's probably done him the world of good that he's got the clean slate with Postecoglou, who really doesn't actually know that much about him probably beforehand, certainly not in a Celtic jersey. So it has just been that clean slate, fresh start, and it's all about taking opportunities, and he certainly grabbed this one with both hands.
Russell, as Amy's rightly pointed out, he certainly has. It's the romantic thing about it, isn't it? It's the Cinderella story that's attached to Ralston. This was a guy who was heading out the door in mid-season or close season there, and most Celtic supporters went, well, fine. Some might even say good riddance, myself included in that. Unlike Amy, who championed him, so fair play to Amy. But it's an amazing turnaround, and I think we spoke on a phone call last week, and we were saying it's November and he's been touted for Scottish international recognition. I mean, what more can he do to get that recognition? And I just thought yesterday was that subtle reminder by Ralston, Clark, if you're watching, you know what I mean? And and the manager was asked the question about Ralston, and the manager said he'll just continue to get better, and I want to work with players like that. That's him. That's Ange subtly saying, this guy's here if you need him. You could do with him without actually naming names and calling it out and saying, get this guy in the Scotland squad, because it's not up to Ange to pick a Scotland international team. No. But just that subtle way of saying, this guy's good, have a look,
Yeah. I think his rise has been remarkable. I think I do kind of want to just look at his contribution to the team as well, as opposed to, all the other stuff. Because I think Amy's right in what she's saying, but I think we've almost exhausted it now. I think his actual contribution on the pitch is now, it merits being a Celtic player. It probably merits being a Scotland call-up in the very near future. And yes, it's like we're in a parallel universe, Tony, because if you'd said that to me 4 months ago, we'll be talking in November on ACSOM about that Tony Ralston should be in the Scotland squad. We'd have probably had a wee bit of a giggle. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. We'd have just said, well, that's not going to happen. Ange isn't a miracle worker. I think Tony Ralston should be an example to a lot of that squad right now that may be out of favour at this moment in time, Tony, or may well be on the brink of getting into the first team sort of squad if they're younger. And look at what can happen once Ange gives you a chance. he will back you to the tilt.
That's
what I really admire.
You cannot underestimate the manager's influence in this either, Amy.
No.
The job that Ange's done, and we've watched it with numerous players, Rogic being one. But the job he's done with Ralston is, to get that negativity out of his head and to turn it into something so positive. I mean, Ange is approaching miracle worker status to get a tune out of Ralston and to get the tune that he has out of Rogic as well. I mean, that I said it yesterday on the pod with Paul John after the game. That's man management. That's football management. That's what you do with players. You make them better. You make them, vital cogs in your machine. And Ange's certainly done that with Ralston, hasn't he?
I think the nicest, well, I say nicest, maybe nicest isn't the right word, but, perhaps endearing then, that's probably a better word than nice, was obviously Ralston's contract gets announced obviously during the week, and then he goes to the press and so does Ange. And, he doesn't take all the credit. He's not like, well, I've came in, put an arm around his shoulder and all of that. He's just like, Tony's worked hard. Tony's came in, he's been great since I've came in, and he's really, gave that confidence in Ralston. And if he's doing that, in front of the cameras and all of that, then you just know that behind the scenes, that is the kind of tutoring basically that you're getting. So I just think the relationship is clearly there, the trust is there, and that's massive, especially for Ralston, who's never been that first choice. So he's never had that trust from a manager really in him. And now he is getting that, and as Ange said, it is all on his back, and he's working hard. It's just everything that he wants to be hearing, and as Russell rightly said, he is just an exemplar kind of figure then, that look, if Ralston can do it, any young guys can do it. Ange will give you the chance basically if you have a fair crack, because you look at Adam Montgomery as well. I think he certainly hit the ground running, and it's perhaps with injuries, and when you've got a guy like Juranovic coming back as well, it's going to be tough for somebody like Montgomery, but he's had that taste of first team football in Europe as well, and it's still being so young. These are the kind of experiences, but there's examples there that Ange will give the chance if it's merited.
Let's continue in this upward trajectory, Russell. Kyogo and Jota, Modern Studies essay, 15 marks, discuss.
Oh, they're just a joy to watch right now. The thing is as well, we were talking about numbers there. They're actually making huge contributions, as great as they are on the eye to watch as footballers, and we love their style of play. It's the actual assists and the goals that they're contributing as well that is so important. It's hard to believe they both came from Portugal and Japan and have settled into the SPFL so quickly. And so they've adapted amazingly to their surroundings. And I think right now when they go forward, they're a devastating force. And yes, I think long term, the trio may become Forest as opposed to Abada in terms of starting matches. But it's a wonderful headache to have. And you want to hope the guys like Mikey Johnson is learning all the time, not just copying what Jota's doing, but being inspired by it and going, well, if I'm going to get your jersey, I need to do better. And you hope that Kyogo's pushing Giakoumakis, and he's pushing, whether it be Albion or Yeti still or not, you hope these guys are looking at them and feel inspired, not, taking it for granted they'll play, but let them be a good motivation around the place, because to me right now, they embody everything good Celtic do going forward.
Kyogo does everything, picks up litter, rubs teammates' knees. Of course, they'll be saying to Giakoumakis, it'll be your turn soon, don't worry, that's the guy is. You're talking about stats. Jota, 22, 14 appearances, 6 goals, 6 assists. Kyogo, 26, 18 appearances, 13 goals, 3 assists. Now, this duo, really, they've got a chance to become iconic Celts, because those stats tell you, Amy, that they're running riot a wee bit, are they not?
I could just repeat everything that Russell's just said, because I think everybody is just kind of in the same boat now. There's not a bad word to say about either of them. Like I say, they're so key to me saying that I generally do think it's some of the best attacking football. It's not just the goals scoring, it's the way the goals are scored, the way the goals are created, it's the interplay with everybody. And that's why I'm bringing in, Juranovic and Ralston on both flanks as well. And I think, David Turnbull, I thought he had one of his better games of the season yesterday as well. And I think I know we'll come on to it, but I think partially due to that was probably Beaton's inclusion. And I'm not the biggest advocate for Beaton to be playing, but I actually thought he did play really well yesterday. I think because he plays that deeper role and is more comfortable there, and Cal Mack was in kind of that little bit further forward, and David Turnbull was allowed to be that even further, little bit further forward, it just kind of all worked out quite well in the midfield. But everybody, going forward yesterday played their part, but the two guys up top, they're just absolutely a joy to watch, and we could speak for an hour about them. You easily could, because you could analyse every little bit of, as you say, rubbing off the knee, anything. They're just they're getting it, and I think it's themselves together as well. Tony, I know you touched upon it. I touched upon it in the column as well. But it's Jota's comments after Thursday's game that it's the family element. We're starting to feel like a family, because it is like 12 new guys together, but there is that family triage going forward, and it's just great to see.
Do you know what epitomised that for me yesterday? Every player except Joe Hart celebrated that third goal with the fans.
Yeah,
every player. I looked and I thought, wow, and I counted to 10, and only one, and I'm sure Joe Hart was somewhere in his halfway line and off his head, but it never cut to Joe Hart. But every player was there, and it was a real kind of moment that I thought, you know what, this family togetherness, this bond, the spirit that's in the team, you saw that, and it was like that in their mind was the game kind of put to bed, wasn't it? When that third goal went in, they thought, right, we can relax, we're happy now, scored a wonderful goal, and that was like jig time as soon as the second half whistle went, Russell, so it's moments like that I think these guys are getting it. They're buying what the manager's selling, and they're all, but to a man, they're buying into it, every one of them.
Yeah. I think there was a big show of unity there, like Amy's talking about. Maybe they are, they're beginning to bond properly now, but I also feel a lot of it was they're beginning to realise the importance. See, after a dreadful result last week, and then they went in at half-time with Dundee getting a goal that really shouldn't have happened because we were in such a commanding position. I think they just corrected the error as soon as the second half whistle went. I think we're just going to fix that right away. And I think the numbers that you're talking about there, 10 out of 11 players are at the supporters' end celebrating. I think a lot of that is significant, because it's actually because they're now getting the importance of every 3 points is going to matter here. Draws won't be acceptable. And I think they knew with the third goal, we've just took back the reins here from a position they shouldn't have been in at half-time, because the first half merited a 2-goal lead and a comfortable half-time team talk where I think that's kind of a good sign though. I think there's a mentality shift that's happening right now. And maybe some of the guys who've never been over the line before, and maybe some of the more experienced ones in the team like Cal Mack, they're beginning to rub off on these players and explain to them, we don't draw with Livingstones, we don't, and that's no offence to Livingston, we just don't do it. We'll need to go make up for that. And they made up for it big time yesterday. And it's the second in a row away performance that's been outstanding. Now, Dundee might not be one of the better teams in the league, but 4 goals away from home, and with such a aplomb the way they're taking them, I think there's a lot to be enthused about.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there's a lot. I like the fact that we fixed our ways from last week. Last week wasn't good. It's been spoken about enough. But what we did yesterday was we corrected it. And I think sometimes you need to have a knockback to actually start understanding the importance of, victory. So it was all good yesterday. I'm very happy.
Now, Amy, let's talk about the manager. A couple of the players have alluded to the fact that it was the team talk yesterday at half-time kind of spurred them on, and they came out the traps, very quickly. And within 5 minutes of that second half, it goes to 4-1 and the game's more or less done. The manager obviously inspired them. So, he seemed to, we've spoken about before, this is a guy who's travelled halfway across the world, and he is operating himself, isn't he? No right-hand man per se. He's got backroom staff, but not the one he wants. So let's just fast forward and say that if he wins the title, I mean, what an achievement that would be in his first season, and playing that kind of brand of football as well. Not getting ahead of ourselves, but just sort of saying that, that I think the Celtic supporters now are, they're excited Russell said they're enthused, but you cannot wait for the next game. This international break's a pest, isn't it? You're like, you're getting annoyed, but because you're loving what you're seeing, you want to see what they'll produce next. Yeah, we get uptight, we get annoyed at results at Livingston, but again, as Russell says, maybe it takes that to just sort of, bring you back down to earth, give you that wee jolt, and just to know that it's unacceptable, and you go again.
I think these international breaks are coming in thicker and faster than any season I've ever known before. And they are a bit of a nuisance. But as much as I do, obviously, I do love my Scotland days. But going back to Ange, I think no matter what, whatever happens towards the end of this season, it's going to be a massive achievement in the sense that he's stuck to his guns. And I know it's came from criticism from ourselves. Not perhaps criticism, but it's just perhaps there's been a little bit of acknowledgement that we'd maybe like him to steer clear just a little bit, but he's sticking to his guns, and we now know this far deep into the season, like, he's not changed up till now, so he's not going to change. And we just kind of have to accept that. But he's going to stick to his guns, and if he's in a position, towards the end of the season that a title race is still alive, then you've got to give massive kudos to him, and that he proved us all wrong yet again. And I think there probably will be a lot of that at the end of the season, and I certainly hope there will be. And not because we all went all guns blazing on Ange Postecoglou. There was a little bit of doubt. There absolutely was, and there was a little bit of concern and worry, like with every new manager, and certainly from somebody that we really didn't know an awful lot about, certainly within our game. So towards the end of this season, if he's in any sort of position to have an achievement, to complete any sort of title win or anything like that, then it's a massive kudos to him. And I look forward to seeing all his celebrations, and rightly so.
Russell, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we are in the title race. I think we will be at the end of the season as well. Will we win the league? I'm very much undecided on that, but I think we'll be there or thereabouts. I think we'll be in the race. And that is absolutely, hats off to Ange, because he does things his way. I think he's done quite a lot of learning on the job as well, if I'm completely honest. I don't think it's been all, we just play, steam train football and batter teams. I think Pittodrie was a huge turning point for me when he played Beaton there. I thought that was him now getting the gist of, let's get 3 points might actually be quite important. I think Saturday might have been the final Tinkerman usage that we've seen. I think you'll realise now that's not going to wash either. And I thought Sunday was just completely effective football with your best players on the pitch. And more of that, please. I think Amy's right. You'll deserve a heck of a lot of credit if we're in a title race at the end of the season. And my gut tells me that I think across the roads, across the city, whatever you want to call it, I'm not convinced that they'll like having pressure on them. And it's up to Celtic to, maintain that pressure. At the end of the day, we are chasing, because it's 4 points already at this stage, which isn't a crazy amount, but still 4 points is a substantial lead to have. But let's breathe down their neck a wee bit. Let's put some pressure on them. And when the international games are done, there'll be an interesting sequence of results that lead up to the Glasgow Derby on the 2nd of January. And if we are still within 4 points, touching distance of them, hopefully even closer, let's ask them some questions. I don't think they've been asked many questions, Tony, in the last 18 months. And I don't take anything away from their achievements, because that is on the other teams to provide a challenge. It's not their problem. But I wonder how they'll hit the pressure. I wonder how they'll hang. And I think if Celtic can maintain a brilliant sequence of results after the international break, up to that game at Celtic Park in the second, it could be a very interesting match. And it'll be interesting to see if they squeak, or squeal, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to. So it's just imperative that in the meantime, we get results like yesterday, and we keep the pressure on them.
I tell you what I did like about yesterday, the fact that he kept the same 11 that started on Thursday night, and they'd earned the right to go out and did to Dundee what you hoped they would do.
Yep.
Kind of couple of minor blips, careless goals. We'll talk about that, but and still keeping the Ange steam. It's and his management. It's the revitalised 3, right?
Yeah.
Rogic, Ralston, and now Beaton is fast coming into that category too. He's asked Beaton to do a job since Pittodrie, And I think Pittodrie game's a watershed moment in Celtic season for couple of reasons. They won ugly. Yeah. They didn't play particularly well, but they ground it out. And then the celebrations by the players and Ange himself. That's the first time I've seen the Ronnie roaring Ange, or some real kind of emotion, right? Because we'd spoken to it prior to that. October was meant to be a black month, or was painted as a black month, and might not win any of the three, out the door, that kind of thing. That was the scenario that was being painted by not so much ourselves, but we were. He had a 50% win rate up until Pittodrie.
Yep.
Right. He's now won 7 at his last 8. That's the kind of stats we were hoping for, prior to Pittodrie, Amy. But it's a big thing, and I think you'll look back in the season and say that was where it all kind of turned. And I think Ange realised it himself. The players realised it. Even guys like Beaton, who he asked to do a job, and now you're seeing it. Rogic, Ralston, Beaton, they trust the manager, don't they? And now Celtic are reaping the benefit of the wisdom that he's imparting to them, and the knowledge and the way he wants them to play football. Celtic are getting results.
You said it yourself, that, Aberdeen over the years, Pittodrie over the years, it has been that, turning point sort of moment. Or you go back to the Invincible season, it was the Motherwell, but it was the 4-3, it was that scruffy game as well, that it was grabbing it, winning ugly, basically. And we all obviously remember that one. But touching on Beaton, like as I kind of alluded to earlier, I'm never going to advocate for him to be in the side. I'm really not. I'm not a fan. I think that he is kind of a bomb scare, and that's not, there's evidence backing that up. It's not just a silly claim, because there's been so many times over the years, as Paul always kind of alludes to, he can't believe that testimonial is on the brink for near Beaton, and it is kind of a worry. But it just shows, that's 9 years or 8.5 years, whatever it is now, of Beaton bomb scare moments. But yesterday I thought he looked so calm, so composed, and kind of, he just used his physique, his height, his strength. He was striding away from players. I can't actually remember who the Dundee player was, who clipped him, and it was a really nasty one. But he was away on a stride. He was jaunting away, and he was quite happily going up the park. But that was a nasty challenge. But something like that was needed to stop him, because he was just on a wee run. But I thought there was a lot to be liked about Beaton yesterday, and I do stand by that. I think his inclusion is helping David Turnbull in particular, because there's no need for Turnbull really right now, or certainly not yesterday, to be thinking, right, I'll need to go back and support, Cal McGregor. But as much as, you still want all your players to go back and defend, and absolutely so, but there wasn't always the need for the urgency for Turnbull, because he is so impactful, even from the halfway line, a long ball, a ping, he's so good at that. But I think Beaton's inclusion, just being that little bit deeper, he knew there was that security really behind him, and then the back line as well, allowed Turnbull to really get in and around the box and be where we really want him to be impactful.
Russell, near Beaton's last 2 performances, I think, have been pretty outstanding. And one thing I have noticed against Ferencváros and against Dundee, his distribution was very good.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I've, that I can label at Beaton in the past. But I thought he very rarely wasted anything in both against Ferencváros and Dundee. And even as simple as keeping it tidy and effective and give it to footballers. But he actually got a bit of a conceit of himself and thought, do you know what? I can play this pass. I can play through balls and stuff. And he was doing that, and he was pretty accurate the last couple of games. And I think that's the player that's always been in near Beaton, but always played maybe out of position and been judged harshly because of, Amy says, those bomb scare moments. The big game clangers, as I refer to. But maybe seeing what Beaton brings to the table.
No, I agree. I think, Tony, there's a couple of things.
Polymorphous comes in here. So disrespectful to Beaton. He's had poor spells, but he's been good for us for a long time too. Well, that's fair enough. That's Polymorphous' comment, and that's what he thinks. But
there was no bigger disrespect than him trying to poke someone in the eye. Against Midtjylland when there's Champions League at stake. So don't worry too much, Amy. You'll be all right. I think near Beaton, for me, is someone who, going back to your point, Tony, him playing at centre back has meant he has became a bit more self-conscious about his ability on the ball, and it maybe drained his confidence a wee bit. And I feel Neil Beaton plays within himself. Now, after the game midweek, me and Paul were chatting on the show with Lawrence, and I said, you watched him get a wee bit of swagger back.
You
know, there was a wee shimmy he did past a couple of players, a wee nice forward pass, and I thought, you don't see him playing many forward passes. Now, that has to be countered with, he also retains the ball very well for Celtic. What I would say that has been noticeable, though, was his last 2 appearances for Celtic have been away from home. Now, naturally, no matter what competition you're in, when you're away from home, the home team has a wee bit more of a go than what a Livingston did maybe last week. And that is where I think Neil Beaton is important for us in the away matches. I think he's someone at Celtic Park is maybe a wee bit unnecessary and domestically. That would be how I would view it. But I certainly think we've now got quite a few examples of when Neil Beaton's been at his most effective, and they all seem to happen away from home, Tony, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, it shows that, one, he's listening to the manager, and 2, he can be relied upon. And as Amy said, first time I actually noticed him using his physique. He's a big guy. He's a big presence. He's a big towering presence in there, and he should be, so that's what I was chuffed about. I thought, you know what? That's what I want from you, Neil Beaton. That's the Neil Beaton I want to see moving forward. Because he has some attributes to bring to the table, Amy.
He does, and for a guy of his size, he should be scoring a hell of a lot more headers. I know the comments are coming in saying, at the start of his career, he liked to have a little ping from outside the box. Some went wayward. There was that free kick late on yesterday as well, and that was, I think it's probably a Tannadice, to be honest. But for a guy of his size, there is not many players in the Scottish Premiership that are taller than him and should be able to use that aerial threat. But I can't think right now that many headers that Neil Beaton has scored. But kind of as you were saying earlier, Russell, as well, the poking of the eye, and that's when I mean Bombsky. Like, I don't always perhaps mean errors, but it's that loss of concentration, because there was a moment yesterday as well that he slapped the player at the corner. It's little moments like that on another day, another referee. They're just silly, and that is the annoyance. So bombscare's perhaps not the right word, but for a guy who is literally about to be given a testimonial at Celtic, or could be granted a testimonial at Celtic, has been in division for so long. It's the little moments of madness. Petulance, like you say, exactly. It's the poking of the eye, the slapping. There is no need to be doing that, and he is that experienced head. He is, and for all that he does right, should be. It's those little moments that you just go, oh, come on, that's what costs. Yeah.
Now, we're not going to get too negative about yesterday, but we have to touch upon the defence and the 2 goals that were shipped. The manager himself said that Celtic could have been more ruthless, but they let Dundee back in, not to their detriment. So he was concerned about the sloppiness of the 2 goals, and that's what concerned me. Gave Dundee a lifeline in a game where they should have been dead and buried both times when they scored. And defensively we were pretty inept. And it's not so much that I worry about that against Dundee, because the game was kind of put to bed, but I worry about it if you go to Germany. We've taken the lead in 11 of our last away European games.
That's right.
So we can conceivably go and take the lead in Germany, but you cannot defend like that and expect to take anything from that game in Germany. If that's what you're going to do, you're going to switch off, lose concentration, and that's the thing about these goals, Russell. It's sloppy, isn't it? I put in the group chat the minute Dundee scored the first goal, I put careless, because I just thought and also preventable. Let's not kid ourselves. Very preventable. So it kind of keeps happening, doesn't it? Despite the fact that we've lost the least amount of goals in the league, but
that's what I was about to say. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because your eyes don't lie, Tony, right? And you can see there is defensive frailty with Celtic. We all can. But yet, then you look at the league stats and you go, we've actually got the meanest defence in the league, technically. It's never felt like that, though, this season, if that makes sense in any way, shape, or form. What I'm gonna say is, kind of like I was saying earlier, I'm very much now more going to focus on how Celtic react. Maybe these silly goals are going to be a trait this season. I'm not saying that's right any way, shape or form, but we have been told all season, expect this. We'll concede silly goals. So if that's part and parcel, albeit that's fine, how do we react from the goals, Tony? How do we react? And I think the way we came out the second half on Sunday, outstanding. And it was a reaction, by the way, even though there's been a 15-minute interval, that was a reaction to that goal that we conceded. We came straight out the box, up for it. I think there was a bit of frustration. They conceded that goal, and I thought it showed. I want to see us react well to these sort of, these moments, because if we're being realistic, they're going to happen, right? And Chris Julian, I can't wait to have back in. I think he'll improve the defence. Will he be the answer to all our problems? Probably not. We are going to have these moments. How do we react, Tony? How do we react? That's the sign of champions, And again, that it was a goal that was needless in the second half as well. Don't ever think that 4-1 the job's done. Firstly, because we've lost leagues on goal difference. Remember, not so long ago, literally lost a league on goal difference. So it can happen. This hockey season, which I think is going to have many ups, many downs, but as I say, I'm not convinced from what I've seen from the competition that they might not have a lot of rocky moments as well. It's now about thinking about things like goal difference. When you're 4-1 up, don't take your eye off the ball, or as Joe Hart, don't run out and get nowhere near the ball. What's the point?
I would cut Joe some slack, because that
I know.
I know what you say, but I mean, he still got it all wrong, didn't he? But I look at the defence, and we've still got the likes of Taylor, Starfelt, and Julian to possibly return to bolster that defence. Do you, like Russell, accept that these things are going to happen, or like the managers, he wants to eradicate it, doesn't he? Because he keeps saying that they're nowhere near the level that he thinks they can produce, and I think that's a brilliant thing, because it's like, no resting your laurels. Don't think winning 7 out of 8 is good. It's like, I want more. I'm going to ask you for more, and you're going to give me more, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's the two way. So Ange is obviously saying, we're not at the heights or whatever. We're not at the best yet, but at the same time, we were warned of 5-4s, 4-3s, 6-5s, all these sort of things. But something has to sharpen up, tighten up at the back. There is a worry, like say, perhaps not always against the likes of Dundee, and that is no disrespect to Dundee, but in Europe, bigger sides, bigger occasions, these are the little moments that really do count. And as you guys say, that leagues can be cost upon this. I think as well, perhaps one of the most frustrating things is, obviously, I think Stephen Welsh is at fault for the first goal, but it's the second one from Joe Hart. He's just been a guy who's came in, he's used all of his experience so well, and I think earlier on in the game, he really did. When Juranovic was in the net, he really calmed him down, and he used his experience in that sense. And I know we can come and touch upon that as well, but it's just something like that. It's that kind of like loss of concentration for Joe Hart, and it's not what you expect. So I think that's perhaps what is a bit surprising as well, because he just went like total Superman. And if he stays on his line, I think he kind of, it's a bread and butter.
It's a nothing ball.
It's a nothing ball. So it's being, Celtics, they're being their own worst enemy again, creating their own sort of downfalls. And it's things like that. If you're beaten by a moment of brilliance, then you can tip your cap and go, right, fair enough, these things happen. But when you yourself are at fault, it's just frustration more than anything, I think.
Now, you're talking about title challenges and goal difference and stuff like that, Russell. I'll tell you what's not going away after 13 games. Hearts. They are still there within touching distance. So, I mean, they've done very well since they've come back up, racking up the points. Can you see them going toe-to-toe with Celtic and Rangers, or do you see them falling by the wayside at some point? Because
it's hard to envisage it, Tony, right?
Yeah.
However, as I've already alluded to, I think we have seen enough frailties in both Celtic and Rangers that if ever there was a season someone might be able to take us, maybe not quite the distance, but closer than they have before, then it would be this campaign. Because neither Celtic or Rangers have particularly impressed me. They've had flashes of, really good performances, and then other times looked incredibly average. So imagine if we were to go into Kev Graham parallel universe, imagine that Hearts were to win the league and that 40 million bounty went to neither Celtic or Rangers. Would the SPFL be a better place for it? I think so. That would be fascinating. If I'm honest, I don't think they'll make it to. I don't think they'll hang with both Celtic and Rangers over 38 games, Tony. I think they might though. They might make it a lot more interesting though for a considerable period of the campaign. I think there's what is it? 11 league games played now.
13, I think. 13.
13. Sorry, yeah, 13. Of course it is. And the fact they're hanging right now is a good sign. And they'll be taking it on a game-by-game basis. Make no bones about it. But the one thing Robbie Nielsen has
is entertain you.
Aye, he's won 2 league titles already with them.
Yeah.
Albeit championship, but he knows how to get titles. So
yeah,
I would like to see them. I would like to see them compete for as long as possible, and then obviously we leave them in the dust in the end. But hopefully, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? It'd be a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think as a football fan, if you take the Celtic hat off for a second, I think as a football fan, it'd be good if they did give us some real competition.
Yeah, Amy, you talk about a game-by-game basis. I look at Saturday's result, and they've swept a Dundee United side who came to Celtic Park and took a point from Celtic playing and came out to play. We touched upon Dundee United in the pod, and we said that at least they came to play a game of football, and Hearts have battered them 5-2. So as Russell says, they might not go the distance, but credit where it's due. After 13 games, they are within touching distance of both Celtic and Rangers, and you have to applaud that.
It is a massive result for Hearts. I think Tam Courts has worked wonders up at Dundee United and kind of done it under the radar. I know they ended their unbeaten run the week before, so it was a little bit. I think both Hearts and Dundee United, they lost. So going into Saturday's game wasn't actually. I think it could have been a lot bigger and a lot more would have been talked about if both sides hadn't dropped points the week before. But Dundee United are a really, really good side, and I think what's really talked about Dundee United is their defensive line. It's a partnership between Edwards and Charlie Mulgrew, actually. And they've just been absolute stalwarts there. Well, I know Mulgrew's actually just came back, but you catch my drift. They're using all their experience and they're really forming a really good partnership there. And for Hearts to get such a emphatic victory against them, I understand at Tynecastle as well. It does speak volumes. I do agree with Russell. I do think that Hearts will drop off. I think they're really kind of grinding out results, and if you look kind of at their results, that was their first massive, emphatic win. 5 goals scored. Everything else has been quite touch tight, but Nielsen's been there, done that, and it's kind of an odd dynamic because I've obviously. Living through East, I've got a lot of pals that are fans of Hearts. So I have to listen to them quite often, to be honest with you. And it is a very split divide on Robbie Nielsen. A lot of them don't like him. A lot of them don't want him in the club. But the fact that he's still, is ticking along, getting results, it's kind of a weird dynamic because you think where they are in the league, kind of the season that they've started off, everybody would kind of be jumping on the Nielsen bandwagon, but there's a lot who aren't really happy with him at the club. But I think he worked wonders really bringing back in Barry Mackay, kind of out of the depths of English football out of nowhere, and I was kind of a bit not really that fazed by it. I thought he's kind of went down south, never really hit the heights. Remember when he was going to be a better Scotland player than Kieran Tierney. But he's not hit the heights that was kind of projected for him. But he's came in, and this is obviously where he's comfortable because he's kind of hit the ground running, and he's got a good stable of players together, getting Gary Mackay-Steven and Boyce, and everything is kind of clicking. John Suter again, he's just now been called up to the Scotland squad, so getting him back from injury was massive. And nobody can underestimate the impact that having Craig Gordon back. That's just an absolute steal from Hearts. But I do think they will drop off. I think they've had a great start to the season. Their cushion as well, obviously, is they don't have European football. They have a lot greater rest than Celtic and Rangers both. But I don't see them, keeping it up that high intensity, as Russell says, for the 38-game season.
But it is just something to be mindful of, isn't it, Russell? That they are there. From a Celtic perspective, that's why we're talking about them. They are there, and they're a challenger at this moment in time. And there's
absolutely
the Celtic need to be aware of.
Yeah, and don't take it lightly either right now. Whilst we're talking about, we're maybe being a wee bit kind and saying, wouldn't it be nice to see Hearts challenge? Deep down, if you actually are in Ange Postecoglou's point of view, you do take them seriously.
Yep.
And you say they're a threat. And matches against them are going to be as important as what they are against other rivals for the league title, So, absolutely, enjoy it from a football perspective. I know Amy does the Scottish Football Show, and I can imagine that you do like the competition, and I kind of admire it as well. But obviously, if you're Celtic, take them seriously.
Now, moving ahead to January, ins and outs, but Celtic, we do a bit of homework here. Ball and goalie, 3 million. Barkas, 4.5 million. Ajeti, 5 million. Sorrow, over 2 million. They were all out of the squad yesterday. 14.5 million quid worth of talent out of the squad. Now, I don't know where you think their futures lie, Amy. Possibly elsewhere. But my goodness, Ange could have done with that kind of dough, couldn't he? Or he can do with, with something approaching that kind of dough to bring in more reinforcements come January. But you look at the money that's been frittered on those guys and you think, I know every signings, I suppose, is a gamble, but that's quite a lot of money to have been gambled on those four for them not to play any part. And it doesn't look like they're going to play any part under Ange because he's maybe looked at them and thought, not for me. So you maybe have to, it's crunch time now, you decide to cut your losses in January, offload them, see if you can get anything for them, and then use it to maybe raid the Japanese market, which Celtic have been linked with a couple of players, Rio Hitate and Daisen Maeda, full-back and a striker. And Ange's made no secret of that fact that he's planning on going back into that market. But it's a bit of a concern, Amy, with these four guys, isn't it? They're lying idle, doing nothing, but still picking up a wage and having cost Celtic a lot of money. Do you cut your losses and try and sell them in January or get them somewhere?
I reckon you kind of have to. It's it's been the story of so many Celtic seasons. I'd love to know, over the years, how much money sits on the bench. We spend a ridiculous amount of money on a ridiculous amount of flops. And we all have our own that you kind of remember, and you always remember them for their own reasons because they never really produced anything in the right way. But it's just when you've got this new manager in who is wanting and will delve into this unknown market really again, and you're certainly hoping that he does. And when you've got, what is it, about 14.2 million, did you say there? You're just like, wow, what could he do with that? It doesn't sound a lot of money, and I know actually in today's market it isn't a lot of money, but the market that Postecoglou's really want to delve into, you just need to think of what we got Kyogo for, and you're thinking, wow, that is actually quite a decent sum of money that is just kind of sitting there. But I do think you've got to cut your losses, especially when the manager is really heavily hinting that they're not part of the plans. What is the point in them sitting there? And for their own career progression as well. We can say it's not worked for Sorrow or Ajeti, but these guys are still at an age where they could go make a career elsewhere. And at the end of the day, you do want that to happen. That is their livelihoods, and they have made their way to Celtic. So they have to have something there. They've not just, tricked their way through. So it's right for them to go and try and revitalise career. I always look at Timu Pukki. I always was so frustrated. I was one of my, when I was quite young then, but I just was always so frustrated because you just could see that there was something in there, but he just never ever ran for a ball, chased the ball, never done anything. And now you see him at Norwich, and now all he does is run, and it really infuriates me. But it's somebody like him, who's went away and then he got the move, and it kind of all does work out. So you don't want their careers to be over just because their Celtic careers are over as well. That's a little bit of romanticism for me as well, but you just want them to be okay.
Russell, can Ange work his magic in any of those four players, or do you think they are surplus to requirements?
Surplus for me, all of them. I would get rid of all of them. The Barkas thing's embarrassment. if they only get 50 pence for him, I don't care. They just need to cut the losses. As for Bolingoli, I think the manager's a wee bit accountable with him. You leave him out the European squad, you then start him in 2 away games, and then he's out in the cold again. You bring him back from the cold, start another away league match, then he's back in the cold again. I'm not quite sure how that benefits Bolingoli or Celtic, if I'm completely honest on that one. Ajeti's strange because Ange obviously seen a player in him initially. This guy was captain in Ange's second game in pre-season, and he looked like he had trimmed down, shall we say, He definitely looked leaner than he had before. He looked up for whatever the challenge was ahead to get him Ange Postecoglou's team, and it's fell by the wayside. Has he impressed? Not really. Would it be beneficial for Ajeti's career to leave? Of course it would. Will we get 5 million back for him? Obviously not. That's a bit of a problem. But yes, it's a lot of money on the bench, but it's not on Ange. It's not his problem. These aren't guys he's signed. He will maybe contest that he actually did try his best with them all, and they let him down, or he didn't feel they were contributing. The Bolingoli one's a bit different, so I'm not quite sure whilst I don't think he particularly impressed when he played, I don't think he did a lot wrong to get taken right out the first team and then out off the subs bench. If he's in consideration, he's in consideration. I don't really get the logic of that one, but Barkas to me is, we'll always go back to the pre-match build-up when he's standing there letting shots fly by him. He doesn't care. Why should we just get rid and just call it a bad experiment? And Craig Gordon will be, I know Amy was talking about him earlier, will be the smuggest man on the planet when Barkas jumps in his jet plane.
D. Kelleher comes in and says 14 million
for
3 Kyogos. That's what you were alluding to, Amy. Now, I don't know if you've done some homework or research on Hitachi and Maeda, but they seem like the real deal. And Ange has worked with Maeda before. I believe he brought him to Yokohama F. Marinos, a striker. So, and I don't necessarily think it would be a bad thing to have 3 Japanese players in the dressing room, Celtic dressing room, come January. Would help them all. They have Kyogo there who would be able to welcome them into the fold straight away. Again, maybe touching on that camaraderie and spirit, and it's maybe something that Ange wants to do. Amy, forward planning.
I am all for it. I think it can only help Kyogo as well. Can't underestimate how important, like you say, camaraderie is. So I am all for it. And if he wants to dip into that market, then let him dip into that market all that he wants. It is. He knows it so well. He's not just been there; he's succeeded there as well. And that's the difference. We can all, know something that we've been a part of, but to be as influential and to be as successful as he was over in Japan, then you've got to, we talk about trust in the process. That is a key element of trust in the process. Trust Ange, just let him go. We've obviously, again, we speak about YouTube reels. They're all kind of erupting right now as well. And everyone that I'm catching, I'm excited. And I know what there is. Again, I was speaking to Andy Raff, and he said, there is a YouTube reel out there that makes Barkas look good. So I know you've got to err on the side of caution, but, Jota's has worked, Kyogo's has worked. So I am all for it, and Ange can dip into that Japanese market all that he wants.
So we were very early advocates of Ange dipping into the Japanese market because we were saying the board should be said to him any more where that came from. And Ange said, yes, here's a list the size of the Magna Carta. What about him, and him? And these two in particular seem to be, there's no smoke without fire with these. They seem to be in negotiations, and they're some way down the line with trying to get these deals over the line. So they would be welcome additions, one by Kyogo, but mostly by Celtic supporters if Kyogo is anything to go by in Ange. And if Ange picked them, having worked with them before or having had nous wisdom and knowledge of them, then could be onto a winner. Yeah,
absolutely. And the 2 plus points are Ange knows the market, right? And we're going to trust his judgment on that side of things because of how well Kyogo's done. The other side is as well, has Kyogo raised the profile of Celtic to these types of guys? Because it's not always about, can we afford them? Can we attract them? Some of these guys might think, the J League, they love it. It's why would I want to go to Scotland? It's terrible weather and all that. It might, but Kyogo sells it. Look how happy he is. He's adored by the fans. And they might all now think, I want a wee bit of that too.
I think Ange helped sell it as well.
Oh, of course. But what I would say is, Kyogo on the pitch is a real life example. It's something for them. It's a good thing because Ange Postecoglou certainly left the J League with a reputation in that country of being a top manager. So a lot of those players either will want to play for him again, or in Kyogo's instance, wanted to play for him full stop. And now I think we've got that real life example of you can adapt over here quite easily. And when you actually hit the ground running, you've got adoring fans left, right, and centre, absolutely loving your work. Kyogo plays football with a smile on his face. I think he's like that anyway. But I certainly think the way he's settled into Celtic's also enhanced that. And if ever there was living proof this can work, this could be a good move for your career as well, then we've kind of had that before Furuhashi the last couple of months, and up to January it'll be half a season by then. I don't think they'll need as much convincing as perhaps they would have before.
And also as well, Amy, there's a wee added caveat that Celtic will be in European competition beyond Christmas. These guys is talking about football experiences, career experiences. Now, whatever competition Celtic will be in, fair enough, but that's something that they won't have experienced, and it could help swear deal. You say, look, come here, you can play in Europe and have a different experience to the one that you've been used to in the J League. I mean, these are all things that I believe are a win-win for Celtic to entice players from the Japanese market to come to the club.
Yeah, and I was just going to follow up basically what on Russell said there as well. And I know you don't always want to admit it because you don't want to think that these can be, and they're perhaps not the most determining factors, but they're all little helps. How many Japanese flags do you now see around Celtic Park? Celtic official Twitter in Japan now as well. There is an official account that is just Kyogo content all day, every day, and it's actually really endearing to watch. If you need a real pick me up, I genuinely go to that. But as well as you're kind of saying with like the European football, the Europa League on Twitter is really, really active, and they are constantly praising Kyogo. They're praising Jota, and they are always quite good with Celtic fans as well because they know they get interaction and it all reflects well and all of that sort of stuff. But that all has an impact, because you're having a real prominence and prevalence really within the Europa League. So it does all add to it because that's how, recognition and players get seen. And we can all like to say that you don't want them to be kind of like factors, but in this day and age, they really are. Players do sit on their phones all day and, they are on social media all the time. It might be a lot to count, but they are all on it. So the little factors, and it's, if you're going to get a little bit of a pick-me-up from a UEFA competition and you're going to see a smiling picture, they are all human. That's the kind of stuff that you all need, that little arm around the shoulder. So, no, I'm like Russell on that one, that the prominence of Kyogo and, the impact that he's having here and just the love and adoration that everyone is really giving to him, that can only be a help in the matter.
You agree with that sentiment, Russell, as well?
Yeah, 100%. As I say, I think Kyogo's came in and he's the real life example now for anyone else, of any other persons of interest, Tony. I think definitely they've now got something to allude to. They've got something to relate to, and they can now go, where do I sign? It's all about January for me. This is a lovely conversation that we're having. It's all very optimistic. My biggest concern is that January doesn't tend to be a time Celtic spend money.
Yeah.
In fact, Celtic tend to tie managers' hands behind their back in January. And that is all the recent managers. In fact, I think we could go back 15 years, and say January's never been, the board have never been so kind to a manager. And that's probably my biggest concern. Whilst these are sweet conversations, the proof will be in the pudding come January. And if Celtic do invest the money we're talking about on those two, Tony, it would be the first time we've seen the board make such investment in January. So the jury might remain out on whether it will happen or not.
But they know what's at stake come May. And if you look at the start line, how big an achievement would it be if Ange wins your title this season? Then it would be pretty monumental. And sometimes you have to speculate to accumulate in that sense because they will get it all back, won't they?
When have they ever done that before?
Well, but then
rarely.
Then that's to decide if they're going to go all in on the manager, then, isn't it? And if they trust his judgment with Brian Kyogo, you would trust his judgment with bringing Hatate and Maeda if that's the two players that he wants, and they're top of the shopping list come January. Listen, what a very positive, upbeat, and what else did you say there, Russell? Broadcast we've just had there. I've enjoyed that. It's been really good.
Yep.
Loved your contribution, Amy. Thank you very much.
As always, thank you very much.
Cheers, Russell. Yeah, it's the Monday Club on a Celtic State of Mind. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember and hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button and you'll get notifications of when the three amigos and the Monday Club are turning up on your screens. So thanks a lot and thanks for your contribution today, guys. Appreciate it.
Sure, Tony.
All right.